Good morning, as we've got people joining. Good morning, guys. We're going to give it another minute or so just for a few more people to join. So just bear with us. We've all just been doing the very British thing, talking about weather.
Oh God, we have.
Hopefully the weather is nice with you. Oh, here we go. Some more people in the waiting room.
Are we recording this session?
We are.
Okay, just checking.
We've recorded all that nice weather chat we've just been having.
Yes.
That'll be the best bit to watch back.
Needs a weather report for Hampshire and Kent. They can tune into the first 5 minutes.
Welcome as people are joining. I'm just giving it another minute or so for a few more people to pile in, and then we will get started. We're expecting about 20 people today, so but who knows, people might be stuck in traffic dramas and God knows what else that's going on today. Go, a few more people. Good morning as you're joining. We're just waiting for a couple more people as they join, and then we will kick right off. So just bear with us. Thank you for joining us this morning, though. I'll tell you what, I will start with the intro as soon as we're 3 minutes past, and I will just keep letting people in as they arrive. So thank you so much for joining us this morning. I'm Becky, I'm founder here at Reflect Digital. We're a digital marketing agency that specializes in leveraging human behavior insights to optimize the customer experience and to level up digital marketing. We work across kind of SEO, paid, customer experience, those kind of areas. And we're joined today by some amazing partners of ours, the BEHAVIOUR agency. So they are a brand and digital agency who use behavioral science to make brands more motivating, more top of mind, and easier to choose. So hopefully everyone that's joining us that was expecting a brunch box has received their brunch box. So please feel free to tuck in. And a massive thank you to Lucy and Chantel on our side that kindly got those all out for us earlier this week. We want today to be interactive, so please ask questions as we're going, and feel free to just pop them in the chat. Feel free to use emojis to share your reactions, anything just to feel like you're part of it with us today. We all like to think that we're customer centric. We all try and have that approach with our marketing strategies, but how do you truly go customer centric in a particular industry? And especially one such as home improvement, which has such seasonal peaks and troughs and quite a lot of emotional purchases going on. So today we're joined by our strategy director, Zoe, and Steve, the planning director at the BEHAVIOUR agency. So they are going to be delving into how human insights can be leveraged to understand seasonal trends and how they influence user behavior and paths to purchase. So Zoe, our strategy director, she's all about client roadmaps, objectives, getting great ROI for clients. She's got over 15 years experience of crafting client-centric performance strategies, and for brands such as Adidas and Monster Energy, so some huge brands there. Her experience spans everything from CRM to data to lead gen strategies, search and performance, social and influencer marketing, as well as a dash of kind of content marketing, PR and brand leadership. So there is a lot there that she's able to bring to the table. And then Steve, who is planning director at the BEHAVIOUR agency, he's been in marketing for 20 years with an initial grounding in not-for-profit at NSPCC and public sector strategy and branding. He's always focused on influencing behavior. He's led strategy for accounts like Co-op, Unilever and EA Games, and worked with agencies spanning advertising, digital, creative, innovation and B2B. That's enough from me. I'm going to shut up. I'm going to hand over to the amazing Zoe and Steve. They're going to take you through, as I said, pop questions in. We will definitely have time for a bit of Q&A at the end. So over to you guys.
Perfect. Thank you. That was a great intro. So welcome, everyone. As Becky said, that's what we're going to be covering today. And hopefully we'll sort of be able to lead you down the road of looking at what sort of behavior and motivations to look at each stage of the funnel. Steve will take us through a lot of that kind of behavior-led thinking. And then we'll sort of wrap each section with, as you move through the funnel, which of those marketing channels might be the ones you want to focus on and optimize to make sure you're going to help nudge people through that home improvement journey. So quick touch, sort of crash course, I guess, on what's actually been happening in the home improvement space. And it's safe to say a lot. I think when Steve and I were putting this together, the word upheaval came to mind. So in the past few years, we've had Brexit, we've had COVID, there's been a myriad of transport, staffing, supply chain issues. We've had the cost of living crisis hit us most recently. And everyone as a result in every industry, but especially across home improvement as well, has had to adapt and change their daily lives, their work lives. Quite literally everything has gone through a massive shakeup. What it's meant in terms of the home space is we are now demanding more from our homes than we've ever done before. They now need to be our workplace, our schoolroom for children, our place to relax. They need to let our kids play. We need to try and gather with friends again now that we're allowed to. We've got our four-legged friends, sort of more pets came home into UK homes than ever before as a result of COVID and the pandemic. And as a result of all of these things, the demand for DIY search terms, things like how to paint colors, I want to replace my sofa, I need to renovate my kitchen, they have surged more than anything in the past 18 months. In fact, home improvement jobs posted online in 2020 went up by 12%, but the demand for tradespeople went up by 32%. More than 13% of people started actually taking on full renovation projects in 2021. And over 45% of people were complaining they're actually now struggling to find tradespeople. So as a result, there's been a massive spike in DIY how-to related search terms. Extensions, annexes, conservatories, they're the sort of top areas in these multifunctional homes. And we've not only changed the way we live and the way we use our homes, we've also changed the way we're shopping and how we're connecting with the brands through our home improvement choices and our journeys. We've now got a real mix that's resurged between e-commerce and retail, with window shopping having been made pretty much impossible during the COVID few years. It forced people even more than ever to change their browsing and buying habits. And in the home improvement space, there was a massive uptick in people going online for shopping inspiration. In March 2020, there was a great study called Understanding the Nation, and that discovered that whilst only 18% of Brits had increased their online shopping because of the pandemic in March, by April, that was up by 45%. And by December of that sort of pandemic year, a massive 68% were now saying that e-commerce was their first choice of retail. And now that the world has sort of opened back and is returning to a semblance of normality, people are still sticking to online shopping, largely because we've developed that preference. You know, we like things to be familiar to us. It's forced us to become really, really, really familiar with online shopping. So those that weren't confident before now are. And whilst the stores are back open now, we're still expecting people to actively seek inspiration for that home shopping journey before they maybe step foot into a bricks and mortar store. So there's a real relationship at play there in the user shopping journey in the home improvement space. What that all means is that the home improvement space has got massive opportunity waiting for it. There's been the home improvement boom, that demand for multifunctional homes, an engaged digital audience that's more engaged digitally than ever before, coupled with the ability to pull people back into that bricks and mortar experience. And how can technology and digital empower that overall user journey? And it means you need a joined up strategy, being top of mind, getting through that marketplace clutter, being really user-centric in your approach to marketing and your approach to messaging. And how do we make sure that a message is going to land at the right time in that sort of very confusing journey? And people are deciding to improve their homes because they are house proud. Maybe they want to increase the comfort and enjoyment of their home. They might be actually searching because they have to fix an issue. They might be trying to choose a product or service to fix something. Maybe they're upgrading an aspect of the home's function. They want to increase energy efficiency, perhaps within the home, improve the actual home's value. Maybe they're preparing to sell their home, or they just need to update the home style. No matter what's driving that initial start of a user's home improvement journey, it's going to be inspiration-led. There's going to be practicality of how do they get the job done. And it means there's a real sort of meeting of heart versus mind. What is going to drive that decision? Is it going to be an emotional decision-making process? Is it a rational one where they're looking at the price point of different brands to make their choice? So there's that constant tug of war, and how do we motivate human behavior to nudge them down the decision? Quick interesting case study here, Lick or Coat. Hopefully you guys might have heard of these two paint brands. These guys really took advantage of that surge in home DIY in 2020. They were sort of two of the main paint players, if you like, that embraced digital first strategies. These two within 6 months had a combined following over 200,000 people on Instagram. But when you look at actual Google search trends and how people are deciding whether to choose Lick or Coat when they're searching for paint, Lick is outperforming Coat by a mile. Interestingly, Farrow & Ball doesn't really show a strong kick at all in brand searches. So we're not sure are painters snubbing the pricey paint for these more affordable ones, perhaps. And when you look at Answer the Public, which is a main sort of Google trend that you can look at, Lick is getting more branded searches. So the things that we're seeing is, can Lick paint be used on wood? Is Lick paint washable? Where can I buy Lick paint? Whereas Coat has been struggling a bit. Whilst it's doing really well socially, it's really battling in organic search. And that's because it's battling against non-branded search terms like one coat of paint versus two. What is peel coat paint, gel coat paint near me? So their brand name is getting sort of eaten up and cannibalized by those non-branded search terms. So search behavior since lockdown has really shown an uptick in brand-led searches. And that's perhaps more people have time on their hands. They're happier to browse the website. Or it could be that that social kick is helping them get their inspiration. So whatever the reason, it just kind of points to a reminder that you really need to optimize all of your platforms to meet the user where they are, whether they're in need of inspiration. And it's ideal that they know and are actually looking for your brand name, and that your brand name is not necessarily confusing to the organic searcher. So over to how some of these kind of behavior-led things help us and work in that sort of sphere.
Thanks, Zoe. Yeah, I think it's, there's a grand sweep there of renovations that Zoe's talked about, but we couldn't pretend that those are all the same. Paint is one of those things that people...
Oh dear.
Tend to do quite often, tend to be pretty rare. And actually, at the end of the day, people know much more about the things they do often. They become experts or feel expert in those things, whereas the other things they feel really uncertain about and really need the help in. So those DIY terms don't spread equally across the whole renovation sector. Actually, we really feel like we know about some of this stuff and can handle it ourselves. And that leads to quite different behaviours, because at the end of the day, experts don't actually tend to need to search so much, need to be inspired so much. They already know what they're looking for. They already understand the market. They've already formed their opinions in a lot of cases. They've already decided they're the savvy ones that know how to explore this market in a particular way. It doesn't actually mean that they necessarily think they're interested in the category either. People who do things often treat them as routine and they don't tend to get excited about them. Whereas for most of us, if we're doing something that we're new to, there's a whole load of interest and excitement and inspiration available to us, as well as a load of nervousness and uncertainty, which means we need that reassurance and that convincing when we're novices. So actually, behaviour is very different in different sectors, but also for those people who are perhaps a little better, more knowledgeable about the sectors, they tend to be a little less open to brands and a little more focused on the more kind of rational decision-making elements.
So when we're looking at what motivates that person, we've seen consumer behaviors become more dynamic and unpredictable than ever. And as Steve said, people need more help navigating choice complexity. Google actually had a term for this. They called it the sort of messy middle, which we'll get to. But the reason for the messy middle, and we've used paint as an example, is that ultimately we're messy decision makers generally. Human beings, unfortunately, are not rational people. The decision journey is made up of those multitude of triggers before purchase. We look for information about a category's products and brands. We weigh up and sort of assess the options to try and make a decision. And there's two different mental modes that are always at play. Either we're in an exploration phase, which is naturally expansive. We're trying to look for as many different options as we can. And then we go into a reductive activity or an evaluation phase where we're really trying to condense and weigh up our decision making and narrow it down to our ultimate choice. So whatever a person's doing, and across a huge array of online sources, they might be jumping between a search engine to a social media, to an aggregator platform of some sort, like a compare paint brands type of blog, to review websites. Either they're in one of two modes. They're in that kind of exploration phase, or they're actually trying to evaluate and narrow down. And the Behaviours Agency has quite a nice sort of buying model that explains that further.
Yeah, and one of the important things to note is that obviously from a Google point of view, Google tends to pick up on people when they're showing active signals of interest, because otherwise they're not Googling stuff. And actually, there's a whole swathe of our time where we spend when we're not actively in buying mode for the things we're thinking about. So even after we've entered the market, it's not genuinely a smooth curve like this. But actually, before we need something, before we realize that we want something, we're being exposed all the time to brand advertising, to going around to other people's houses, and somewhere along the lines our thoughts might turn to buying again. But there could be quite a long time before we actively enter the market, until those triggers that that get us to actually start actively considering items. So that journey between when thoughts are turning to buying again and when we actively enter the market is a whole inspiration space, a whole opportunity for brands. But once you, sorry, can we just get back?
Sorry.
Right. And that change, that mindset shift from being just a consumer who's passively consuming communications to being actively in market is a really important mental shift, because our whole kind of attitude to the category changes, our whole attitude to the way that we consume media, the way that we consume inspiration changes. But that changes again as we get from that exploration phase into that more like that narrowing down evaluation phase. And as Google point out, that's not a smooth curve by any means. We jump back and forth in and out of market in reality, but there's a general trend, and we can detect and respond to signals that change as we go through that process, which means that we have different ways of targeting them, which is the next slide. So actually, when we think about when people are out of market, that's our opportunity to feed their motivation, to feed their interest in the category, their belief that the category solves their problems or will satisfy them in ways they're not satisfied at the moment. When we come to actively interesting, people being actively interested, we need to be the brand that comes to mind. We need to be top of mind at that moment. We need to resonate with the category entry points and have strong memory signals that mean that we come to mind. As we get closer to purchase, we need to be easy to choose. So we need to remove the barriers to choosing us and make us the easiest option as possible. And beyond that, we need to make sure we're making that decision feel right. So we're going to talk today about those 4 categories, just working through that cycle in the simple sense, and talk about the media that can help us with that, but also the kind of behavioral tools that we have at our disposal to make those things work. So yeah, this is an overview of that idea of a cycle of behavior, where we go from media that are really about reaching out to people, to media that are showing that they're coming towards us, to media that start to satisfy that need for closure and information that helps them judge, to the media that helps us reach out to them, keep them a customer of ours, keep them happy through the process, perhaps the installation process, which could be a long-term thing. So you'll see that pattern recur as Zoe and I talk today. So first stage. So we talked I just mentioned motivation is the key here. So actually to enter any market, we need a combination of things. We need motivation, we need a trigger to enter, and then we need the things that make it easy we need the capacity to buy those things, so the resources to buy it. And in the absence of one of those things, we won't do it. But motivation exists before we're in the market, so it's the right place to start. And this is our motivation map, which is our way of kind of looking at the whole of human motivation for buying anything and mapping it into one simple model, which is basically from is it removing a fear for us, or is it maximizing an opportunity or a hope for us? So hope and fear is that scale, and then on the other side, is it about ourselves? Is it about us comparing ourselves to others? And that lets you put these into 4 categories that then break down into subcategories. So for instance, if we think about our kind of natural fear, well, at the moment, there's a lot of fear around, a lot of kind of concern around the cost of living, obviously. So security is a really natural space, and people who brands who give people a sense of control or stability can win in that space. But equally, there's people who want to take that opportunity, maybe have money that they don't want to see get inflated into nothing. So they want to go out there and take advantage of it and live life and experience pleasure. There's also people who just like to be able to show off, and there's plenty of showing off in the home category. So status is important there, but also people like a good deal, and that's also a kind of winning against the markets, comparing yourself to others. And then the final category is that category of belonging, of feeling a part of a bigger tribe or family or home, or a sense of connection to a bigger community perhaps. And that's also a really important part of what we do. So some examples from home of that kind of category playing out. You can see how a brand saying something like "made you look," made.com you look, that's clearly about status. It's about the opportunity to show off and the opportunity to be proud of the purchases you've made. Whereas What's your thing? The DFS line is perhaps more of a fulfillment line. It's about really you expressing yourself through the furniture you buy, and whatever your personal expression might be. That Sophology line about the comfort zone is a more of a security sense. It's clearly about, right, this is something I can rely on, I can trust, I can buy into, and I've got a clear sense of the control of the price that it might come to. And Loaf is a real sort of community of loafers. It really sort of creates that mood of belonging, of a sense of like we're all these kind of people, and that kind of brand plays into that space really well. So those are examples of how those kind of motivations can come to life. We work with Sharps, the fitted furniture brand, who've had a big couple of years thanks to everybody wanting to tidy up the mess they're living in. I'm looking around wishing I'd done it, and behind this lovely screen there's plenty of mess. So Sharps are a great brand for buying into that sort of space between security and fulfillment. There's a bit of beauty, but there's also a bit of organization. There's a bit of kind of getting control of all that kind of clutter in your house, but doing it in a way that really is a beautiful expression of yourself. So fulfillment is a big part of it, but there's a heavy dose of security in there as well.
And there's lots of channels that you can play with when you want to be present at that kind of pre-need space. In the home improvement sector, we've spoken a lot about inspiration. We know that social is great in this space where people are sort of really early. They might not even be sort of thinking yet about replacing a sofa, for example. But when they start looking at their favorite Instagrammers who are sort of, commenting on a particular loaf sofa or whatever, they might, be prompted to consider. So we know that, help, guidance, and visually rich media lives beautifully in the social space, particularly across Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok. They're all great direct-to-consumer social channels to consider. Did you know, for example, terms, and YouTube is a massive key destination at the moment to learn and be inspired about topics. Gardening, again, with everyone sort of being trapped in their homes, gardening saw a massive uptick. There were 47 million hours of gardening content watched on YouTube in Great Britain. That was an 82% increase year on year, and people suddenly passionately investing in their gardens. So really looking at how you can leverage video, photographic content, making sure, of course, that you target it and you amplify it via paid social to help ramp your audience reach up in the early stages. You can also look for key trending hashtags across those platforms, so you can try and sort of start introducing yourself into your customers' daily life on social channels as part of that scroll. And ultimately, even if it's pre-need, even if you're in that early stage of content consideration, you can still use social as a destination push to your website. So going through social as a channel to expose your brand, but then making sure you optimize the copy to pull people through to the web platform for that point of conversion, or to try and sort of prompt them to that next stage can be really useful. Digital PR is another one. As Steve mentioned, getting top of mind as early as possible. It's always a challenge that marketers have to face. Digital PR can be really great at helping establish that kind of brand awareness. So things like publishing articles, online press releases, blogger events, journalist content, all of that kind of stuff is really great at getting real top of funnel visibility. And the great part with that kind of content is it does a double job. It can also, aside from answering the awareness game, it can help you build quality links back to your site. So that kind of genuine link building can actually influence your SEO and your website's performance. That sort of content all helps with what Google looks at in terms of EAT, which stands for expertise, authority, and trust. So it really helps you to build credibility and trust to your web platform and help you build out your referral traffic. And any kind of great content like that can really help you tackle that sort of top of mind and brand awareness objective in the early stage. And then hopefully, if you've done all of that, you might be able to then move on to the next sort of phase in the funnel, which is hooking people when they're actively looking.
Yeah, so active looking, at the moment when people enter the market, whatever's triggered them into the market, you want to be the brand that comes to mind, you want to be the destination they head to. And in order to do that, you have to have built those kind of category associations, those things that make you the brand that comes to mind when whatever that trigger might be, they're brought to mind. And part of that is about building your brand in a way that makes it memorable and easily recallable. And there's four key components to that. There's that kind of category entry points approach of building around the associations with the category, so the things that might drive people into market. There's also just building a brand that everybody knows and recognizes and being consistent about that, so that actually that every layer of your brand keeps on building the same idea for people, so they can keep on recalling that really easily. Then there's heuristics, which is brand, effectively the distinctive brand assets, so that the elements of your brand that stand out and make you different from other people and that are easily recalled. And there's lots of tips and tricks to be played with there. Huge amount of kind of sensory input that we can play with, visual, sound, even smells that people associate with the brand. And then the final, most powerful part of memory formation is around emotions. If we can provoke an emotion in people and be associated with that positive emotion, there's a really good chance that that will link to memory, because emotions and memories are very closely linked. So examples of people doing this within the world of home just shows the Kitchens brand, Kitchens sort of world. It's that magnet ad is all about that kind of, they called it shame, but effectively that kind of moment of wanting to be able to show off. You're worried, you're looking at your kitchen and thinking, this is shoddy, I don't want people to see it. So they're looking at that kind of category triggers. Why might people get their kitchen done? Whereas magnet focus more on just building a brand that's incredibly consistent these days, a really impressive kind of set of consistency around how they talk, and keeping it simple and making it really accessible for people. Actually, in kitchens, there's an oddly a shortage of distinctive brand assets in a lot of ways. Howdens do have a chicken that they never use, but actually, if you think about the kind of symbols that other categories use and the ways in which people can kind of stand out from each other, there's not as much as you might expect in terms of visual assets or even sounds or shapes that people associate with particular brands. But the one that's really been trying to push the emotions recently is Ren, who made their great big Greatest Show style ad with huge amount of kind of happiness and joy attached to it, loads of kind of fun and surprise in that element, in that campaign. So they've really sort of built that kind of, they've expanded into that kind of emotional space to try and capture the attention and make sure that pays off. And it's paid off with Zoe, who's just had her kitchen done by Ren.
I'm a sort of a case in the home improvement space, having just gone through the massive cycle of comparing Howdens to Magnet, to walking into showrooms, to, you know, doing the whole gambit before finally deciding on Ren's. And my disastrical Reno starts next week, so hopefully it'll be a good experience, because Ren impressed me so far. So I'll let you know. We'll host another webinar about, you know, the ins and outs of kitchen renovations, perhaps after I've managed to survive that.
We work with Carndine luxury vinyl tiling, so they're a brand that have a trade brand called Paleo, and in that world, you know, a big part of what we need to do is make sure that when people think of vinyl tiles, they think of Carndine or Paleo. So we built, specifically deliberately built this asset of the horse, so that there's just a very easy, memorable feature that we can have for that Paleo. The horse is called Paleo, and it's helpful. It's almost the kind of trade whisperer in the advert. So we've built a kind of, we've built humor into that ad, but also we've built a key brand asset that makes the brand more memorable. So that's a big part of what any brand is going to be built around, the distinctive assets that you have that nobody else can own.
And if you've got those kind of distinctive assets to play with, then you're all about how do you use them in the right way across the right channels to make sure you're getting the attention of the right decision maker. And you have to optimize your primary website platform ultimately if you're going to start nudging people down there. A very, very rough rule of thumb that you can start with is to try and aim for at least 50% of your traffic coming through organic, which means you're starting to hook in the relevant search terms. You're trying to pull people towards your brand that are actively using Google as a search starting place. So you need to make sure your site's in its best possible shape. We need to make sure that Google likes you from a technical point of view, but ultimately we need to be paying attention not only to our brand aesthetic, but also to answering what customers' needs are and answering their questions, helping them with their search queries. So really investing time in that keyword research, making sure that once you've done that learning, you're then mapping those keywords across your site and into your content, because if you don't do that, you're not going to show up in the discovery phase with generic search. So investing in generic keywords, making sure you're showing up as consumers look for answers to those terms, making sure things like your local, particularly if you've got a store and a bricks and mortar environment, your local SEO and NAP, which stands for name, address, and phone number, is all up to date, will help, especially if you're trying to pull people into store. And there's loads to consider when it comes to making sure that that beautiful web platform with the beautiful horse is going to be seen. Across some of the things that are technical to optimize would be things like schema review ratings, making sure that people can see those star reviews of your business. That really speaks to people's need for social proof, need to sort of believe that this is a credible, trusted brand. Internal linking, updating your SERP knowledge, focusing on things like core web vitals, which are all to do with your page speed, your user experience, you know, optimizing for your images, and then making sure you're seasonally relevant. So there are massive like peaks and trends. We know that everyone's going to be going nuts in their garden before spring and summer. So making sure that we're taking advantage of optimizing our landing pages and all that kind of stuff so that people can find that beautiful brand to answer their questions. And then it comes down to how do you know what content's actually going to engage with people? And this is where really understanding the intent behind that behavior, sort of intent-led keyword optimization, is key. A couple of ones you can think of is transactional. So this is where someone might be looking for, in my case, like, cheapest flooring alternative, or, cheapest window treatments. They might be looking at, buy kitchens or buy in-store home kitchens. Informational ones, reason why these are highlighted is this is sort of a bit of gold dust. We can really answer to, how to, kitchen ideas, what's the best paint. Those are really easy terms that you can start helping answer people. You can craft how-to content. You can offer up ideas and craft content that sort of answer that type of informational search. And then navigational is when people are sort of perhaps slightly further down the funnel, they're actually looking for an active login, or they're looking for a store address, or they might be trying to reach out and contact with B&Q. So ultimately make sure you're being relevant. Don't be scared of humor. People do like responding to human style brands, so you can add value through humor. Don't forget accessibility, making sure that accessibility is key, and mix up your formats. So MUM is a sexy Google algorithm you may or may not have heard about. And ultimately a very short crash course is to make sure that you are, looking at format diversity. You're making sure that you can answer search terms across a variety of lots of different format considerations. So quick content brainstorm here. If you think about your own sort of customer and their decision phase, what's the sort of content thought process that might hook them into your world? What content might the audience really engage with? Is it likely to be a how-to? Is it likely to be voice optimized search for home improvement retailers that want to quickly compare paint or take a picture of a type of paint and do a picture search? Maybe it's a compare and contrast infographic between different sort of, what does Wren offer that Howdens doesn't? Or it could be real life reviews by influencers. So we're going to give 30 seconds, if it works, hopefully on the clock, to just try and think of what are those common ideas. You can pop them into the Slack if you don't want to. If you want to keep all your ideas to yourself, that's also absolutely fine. But a quick sort of share some brainstorm thoughts around content that you think could really resonate and be useful to your decision makers in that kind of phase of their user journey. When it came down to Wren, they did a very good job with their content. There was some excellent comparing and saying we're 20% usually less expensive than Howdens. We're usually 10% faster than Magnets. So they'd really leaned into that, not being scared to compare themselves to various people. And we'll sort of go into the chat in a moment and see if we've got any ideas when we get towards the end of the presentation. Other one to think of, though, is moving on to great content deserves to be seen by as many eyes as possible, particularly with your beautiful brand, and making sure that as many people have the opportunity to see it. So you can think of paid media as your opportunity for amplification. It can really help grab attention, direct users into your funnel. If you think about this year, this is kind of the year of bank holidays, particularly with the Jubilee weekend that we had. So you could have considered upweighting your paid campaigns to really amplify sale or incentive offers, and timing that around that 3-day weekend when, in my case, I'm trying to badger my husband to paint the conservatory, for argument's sake. So it might be a good time to try and upweight paint choices or paid discounts. Comprehensive paid media strategies can really focus on audience and focused bidding strategies that can help get you to the earlier stage of the funnel. And you can obviously iterate that strategy and plan targeting right through the funnel to help really cultivate and sort of prompt your users to conversions. And whilst you're thinking about Google ads, perhaps, or Facebook ads, don't forget about video and YouTube again. YouTube can sort of be seen as your second largest search engine. So in terms of driving that reach, driving that attention, video content can be one of the best ways to drive it. 95% of ads are viewable and 95% are still watched with sound on. So it's still a really good, useful place to kind of catch people. Just don't forget there's a handy little ABCD storytelling framework. So attention, making sure you're using that story. Branding, if you've got that beautiful horse or a chicken in your brand, making sure that you're elevating that really often as possible and early. And like Steve said, emotion, so connection, helping people real feel and think and feel something and sort of seeing and it being exposed to an ad. And then don't forget direction. So ask them to actually take action. And Google's done some studies around this, and ABCD style ads are often to see a 30% increase in viewability and engagement. So a couple of quick tips there in terms of how to use paid and how to look at how SEO and paid can sort of support you across that funnel. And if they've seen all of this great content, hopefully they're going to get to a point of having evaluated and being able to make an actual decision.
And at that point of decision, usually what you'll find in home is that quite often people have got maybe 2 or 3 options that are all pretty much aligned. They're all capable of doing what they're looking for. They're all reasonable options, reliable options, things that you could believe in. And at that point, actually, the difference between those brands starts to disappear, and people start making judgments based on which one's the easiest to choose. Ease is such a big factor in our brain's chemistry that it's often overlooked. But actually, ease is all about what people feel short of. And there are 6 metrics that people effortlessly measure by because we use them all the time. These are the resources we have to spend at any given time. We can always spend money, effort, time, risk, individuality, or conscious thought. So it's all about whether or not which one of those feels in shortest supply at any given time that really influences what people do. And we can play on those because we use them all the time, because our brain makes these judgments really quickly. It's natural for those decisions to happen with what we call the system 1 part of the brain. So not the system 2, very carefully considered, the system 1 bit that makes a judgment incredibly quickly. And so we can influence that, and we can play to that, and we can help ourselves, we can help our brand feel the easiest choice by making it feel as if it's saving us one or other of these resources. So perhaps people might be influenced by time, so we can use the power of now, or they might feel as if the one that makes it the easiest is the one to choose, or it may be that the one that doesn't leave you standing out from the crowd, making an awkward decision that's different to what everybody else would do. So going with the herd, or even just feeling like the safe option, the one that you can absolutely trust because it's very well established. And playing on these six metrics is a really important part of how we can nudge decisions, nudge people closer to that buying decision. And you can see these metrics being used all over brands' sites and brands' kind of communications. Here's some examples from Magnet, and I might just get you to see if we can have a guess at which ones people are playing on here. So when you're looking at our customers' kitchens, which resource do we think people are playing on there? Which of those kind of features might come to mind? Not sure if I'm going to persuade anyone to go out on a limb here. So maybe I'll go with the easier one of how to buy a kitchen in 5 simple steps. Which of those do we think it is? Okay. Ease, correct, yeah. On the one on the left, where we're talking small or medium, and we've got the numbers against it, the actual amounts against it, that's putting a number into people's heads. It's playing on that idea of money. In the bar where we've got hurry, offer ends soon, we can clearly see that's playing on people's kind of tendency to be stimulated by time, but also a little bit of risk of missing out that's being played on there. So all of these kind of features, just skip on for me, Zoe. You can easily see how these play out into that metric model, and any of those kind of features are going to help nudge people along those journeys. So when we're playing on that kind of herd impulse and trying to show people other people like them that they can relate to, it's all about kind of saying, oh, I can rely on that decision, I can fit into that pattern. When you show scale and stability and branches, you're clearly playing on that sense of risk and giving people the reassurance that if a business has got 195 stores, it must be reasonably reliable. The ease with which your brain can get its head around choosing between the kitchens that are on offer, how it works, and other people's kitchens is a really simple sort of model. And you can also see the other ones we've already mentioned there. So this model really helps to kind of generate ideas as to how you might stimulate communications, keep them moving forward, keep people moving forward in that journey towards buying.
And of course, securing that conversion moment digitally, playing off of all of those behavior indicators that Steve's taken through is really about how do you then help the decision maker with your actual page layout and with your page content. And we make over 35,000 or something ridiculous decisions every day. So that kind of ease thing is not sort of to be underestimated. That kind of decision burden can really lead to cognitive overload. So we want to make that path to purchase as simple, as easy as possible, because always, as Steve said, if given the choice, the brain is going to go with the path of least mental effort. So, you know, another behavioral science technique is called choice arch or choice architecture framing. And you'll really see this at play with visual design, with interactive design in UX, with interface elements, with the use of language. So you can see here, we're doing literal very easy tick boxes on Fitbit. So you can decide which one do I want. There's a multitude of Fitbit watches you could choose. Which one do you want to go with? So you can see this at play across all sorts of industries, not just in the home improvement space. And ultimately that motivating cue, I'm using Ren because, like I said, I've been a victim of falling to Ren's powers of marketing persuasion. Who doesn't love a deal? Our brains are sort of constantly seeking reward. It's released in the form of dopamine. There's an actual chemical positive kick when we feel like we've secured a deal. And to, again, playing on that fear of missing out that Steve just mentioned. So really helping nudge them to that happy spot. And we've really seen, because of this kind of massive surge in DIY, because of the massive choice now that in digital and in store, that kind of play on the reward and scarcity principle in the homeowner space is probably some of the strongest. So brands are using deals, offers, communicating urgency to drive intent. And looking at Ren as an example, just when I was going through that sort of navigation phase myself, in one journey on their same website, they were telling me there was 5 years interest-free, 20% off solid timber worktops. There were 20% off taps until the end of May, which is when I was kind of shopping. There was 40% off woodpecker flooring, which is why, unfortunately, they lost me on Carndine. I went with woodpecker. Sorry, guys. But on average, they were also telling me they were 6% less expensive than Howdens. And on average, they completed their kitchens 20% less expensively than Magnet. So all of that was packaged up in their same single user journey. So it was incredibly sort of hammering that scarcity principle and that kind of, you're going to get a deal plus a beautiful kitchen with Ren. And as you can see, sort of the journey, when I was going through this, I was also being retargeted by a multitude of other brands in the home improvement space. So this is from my own Instagram during the period of time when I was hunting. And as you can see, they sort of picked up on the fact that I've been looking at paint, I've been looking at windows, I've been looking at kitchens. So my Insta feed at the moment is still chock-a-block full of paid ad targeting me, because I've been on all of these brands' websites in the past few weeks. But there are still ones that, you know, personally, I might think work harder than others. There's some that are much simpler in terms of their call to action. Someone like Coat is very much leaning on visual kind of cues, whereas Safe Style PVC is very much leaning into that deal, buy now, pay later kind of leveraging. And Ren, as we said, is kind of showing the spring sales. So they're trying to play on a couple of messages there. There's a sale, there's that affordable luxury. So there's that kind of ability to show off potentially. And there's that made in the UK. So again, leaning into that trust, safe space kind of thing. So we all know that behavioral science tells us we're more likely to make a choice when there's limited options available. So that limited choice bias. So don't overwhelm is the key trick. When you're looking at your sort of paid ads or any of your kind of social messaging, make that decision as simple to communicate as possible. And when it comes to the actual UX, when you're trying to get those goal completions, when people have landed on a site, there's a lot we want people to see and do, but ultimately, if you try and pack it all into the same journey, you might sort of divert them from why they came to you in the first place. So it's okay to have things like pop-ups on your website or value ads, but you really need to just not throw a pop-up onto a page for the sake of it. It needs to have an obvious connection to the intended action so that there's always that clear path to the central journey. We don't want to get people lost in a maze. So if you're designing journeys, really lean into copy that converts, influential design, focus on your functionality and experience. You know, your journey needs to be useful, needs to be usable, needs to be findable, credible, desirable, you know, all of those kind of things to really make it sticky. And it's about just sort of helping people get to that journey. And don't forget to really fall in love with testing and learning, please. Try moving your buttons, change your landing pages, maybe upweight a call to action. You know, the beauty of digital is we can test and fine tune ways to really lean into some of these behaviors and help nudge people in the right direction by understanding their intent, by understanding the behaviors that we're trying to answer to give them that point of decision making. And again, to harken back to the sort of bricks and clicks combination, there's also a lot of fun to be had in utilizing the innovation and power of digital to enhance your actual in-store experience. So join up that holistic kind of rich experience between digital and the real world. It can really help you, you know, stand out from a competitor. at home. I'm sure some of us have done the whole, tap on a sofa on the Wayfair website and hold your phone up in your living room so you can see what it would actually look like in your living room, or, looking at what a paint color would look like in your bedroom. It's really there to empower that experience, but you can also use it in store, with interactive screens. Again, I'll just use Ren as my own personal example. They had their in-store design your kitchen experience that had a fully immersive VR walk around. So I was literally with a headset being able to see what my actual kitchen would look like, which was incredibly emotive for my journey. But AR, VR, or simpler things like product 360s, all of those can be accessible without huge budgetary investments. They're also massively scalable. So look at ways that you can kind of enrich your user experience by empowering through technology and digital generally. So hopefully, if we've done all of that, they've made their choice and they've bought, the paint or the Ren kitchen in my case. But it doesn't stop post-purchase. I think that sort of often gets left off, and we wanted to just make sure that we don't abandon our customers once they've sort of made that purchase decision.
Yeah, actually, from a behavioural point of view, the moment of purchase is a huge moment for the consumer, especially in big purchases, a huge moment of uncertainty, and a huge moment of potential buyer's remorse. And certainly all of that uncertainty is an opportunity for brands to step in and make sure they can take it away. In fact, so much of, especially in home, so much of that is just the beginning of the journey for the consumer. It feels to them like the beginning, not the end. And actually making that decision feel right immediately after the order is placed or that decision is taken is a huge part of turning that into a happy moment instead of potentially a really fearful one. But also giving at that moment that kind of sense of visibility and control of what's going to happen next. We've all known that experience of kind of almost entering the black hole of post-purchase and not knowing when things are going to happen next and how much in control of that. Even the illusion of control for customers can be incredibly powerful at that moment, just to give them a sense of can they predict when the delivery date is going to be, the installation date? Will they be able to know what's required of them? From then on. So creating that kind of really focusing on giving people a sense of certainty and positivity at that moment is a huge part of making that experience feel right. But thereafter also, there's ways that we can make that experience as positive as it can be by concentrating the pain points, by lessening the mental load for people, just reducing the friction in the experience. And part of that also is getting out of the mode of it being an impersonal transaction, but actually, introducing the people who might play a part. So no doubt we all got to know DPD drivers and the rest in that kind of lockdown period, and we start to get to know people and start to feel slightly uncomfortable about how many times they came to our doors. But actually, all that humanity and that fun that you can put into that experience, once people have made that commitment, is a big part of how it can all feel positive and a build towards something great. And actually, when it comes to completion or delivery, and there's a huge opportunity there to take that one moment of positivity, which hopefully Zoe's about 2 weeks away from, and turn it into an opportunity for the brand going forward, either as an advocacy moment, a reviews moment, or even just as a way of locking them in as a future customer. So really trying to capture that moment and that completion moment into something that feels really positive. And if not, make sure that we're learning from it, or in any case actually learn from it, so that we can make sure that we're preferred the next time, so we lock in that experience for people that actually it's easier to choose us next time as a result of having chosen us this time. And so lots that can be done post-purchase to make sure that the experience is as positive as it can be.
Yeah, and to that point, like these are two of my favorite quotes, which is, Bill Gates was your most unhappy customers are your greatest sources of learning. So to the point of learning, you've got to be brave enough to face up to criticism, to, negative comments on social. You need to be kind of aware of what might be said on your Facebook posts, on your Instagram posts, in the comment section on your website, whatever it might be, to really understand where you might have let people down. Customers can be incredibly forgiving as long as they see you being responsive if there might have been an issue or a delay or something in the home improvement space. And to just harken back, a sort of a common theme that we've been referencing today is that people forget what you said, they'll forget what you did, but they don't forget how you made them feel. And if you've celebrated the end of something, if you've been able to bring that humanity in, that kind of emotional lock that you can create to your brand is probably one of the most valuable things you can aim for throughout an entire buying cycle, is to create that moment of sort of emotional, of locking in that relationship post-purchase. So ultimately, how do you guarantee all of this? How do you make sure that you're kind of going to get your home improvement marketing bang on, that you're going to deploy the right channels, the right messaging, the right brand to give you that success? And hopefully we've given you some useful tips today, but there is no sort of one fit for all. It does really demand a holistic strategy. It has to be customer centric. You really need to sort of focus on those intents, those needs, those kind of human behavior indicators that we've covered today, and really look at how you're joining up, your experience and those touch points across those digital channels and platforms. Embrace that philosophy of test and learn whenever possible, and make sure you are taking the time to understand the intent and then invest the effort. I'm going to try to turn my light back on in here, and then try and invest the effort in creating a content and channel matrix that is kind of delivering to your user intent at all stages of that purchase cycle. If you're harnessing the power of that human behavior in your strategies, in your messaging, in your campaigns, then you can actually build that trust at each and every opportunity with the customer that's going to give you the ROI at the end of the day. And so if we leave you perhaps with one thing to take away, it's really make the customer the hero. Understand how your brand can answer to their needs for ease or security, or how do we help nudge them in a way that's helpful and keeps them and their best interests at mind. So hopefully we've equipped you with some value and some relevance to customers in that home improvement space, because ultimately, we're all here to make sure you can get those conversions, and you can get that positive ROI from your brand and from your marketing in this sort of very competitive home improvement space. And I think that's us today. Are there questions? I'm hoping there might be, but are there any questions?
Amazing. Thank you so much, Zoe and Steve. That was, I've heard it before, but I learnt more stuff again, which is always the sign of a good webinar. So, and we have recorded it. I think I've just let another person in. So for anyone that has missed most of the content, or for anyone that wants to share it with colleagues, we're going to have a recording that we will share with you in the next 24 hours or so. But yeah, questions. So people can pop questions in the chat, or you can come off mute. You can stick your hand up and ask questions. I'll get us started. I guess I'm left thinking, if I'm sitting there as a home improvement brand, like, where do I start? Because I probably feel like I am doing some of this already. Like, most people are trying to do bits of it, and will feel like they're trying to move things forward. But I guess almost like, how do I audit where I am, and where do I start to really make sure that I am being customer centric and I'm moving things forward?
I think there's probably different ways to skin that cat, so to speak. I think when you're trying to audit where you are, I'm a huge data-led person. So I would naturally turn to understanding what your digital stats are telling you now. You can look at things like your goal conversions. Are they in the right space? You can look at your sort of engagement rates of any social content you might be doing, and compare yourself against your ideal competitor. So benchmarking yourself against someone can be really useful to sort of say, are you on par with what might be happening in the marketplace? I think the other aspect of sort of auditing yourself is not being afraid to lean into your data. If you're trying to change something and you've got an engaged email database, for example, things like surveys or polls, or actively looking for that two-way input from an audience set can be really useful. And I think perhaps, Steve, from your point of view, and some of the things that I found fascinating from the behaviors agency is really, do you understand what your brand is trying to say, and have you tapped into all of those aspects of sort of brand signaling? Would be something that's probably worth a look as well.
Yeah, at the end of the day, brands are hard to change overnight. It's really tricky to kind of, because obviously they're built on layers and layers and layers of experience and years potentially of work. But things like emails and web pages are incredibly easy to change overnight, and actually start to see the results of it. So in a way, like, it's always easier to start, if you're looking for a place to start, with those kind of incremental changes that could be made and experimented with and tried. And again, that your approach of, kind of talking about testing, but maybe using the metric framework as a way of doing that testing. Firstly, can we take some stuff away? Because quite often web pages are incredibly complicated, and we're asking everybody to think about 17 things at once. So actually taking things away to start with, and then actually introducing things that perhaps are kind of ways of nudging that behavior, making that page as easy, as cognitively easy as it can be. It's a good place to start. And actually, in a way, the other thing to do is to say, well, where is the problem? As you say, if you're looking along along that customer journey, do we have a problem attracting people? Do we have a problem of getting interest from people as they're looking at us? Do we have a problem converting people, or is it a problem post-purchase? And most of the time, most people are going to focus more at that front end, because the more you get in, the more likelihood you're going to have success at the other end. But finding that kind of using that framework of 4 quadrants and going, where do we want to focus our activity? Obviously, we're really happy to help at the very top end, but we're also, there's plenty to be done in that kind of middle section, where actually the difference is made between someone who you've invested a lot of time in getting through this journey, but haven't necessarily converted. There's a huge payoff to be had out of those people too.
Yeah, I love that. And I do love the metric system as well. It's a really easy one to kind of digest and to test. And yeah, you're completely right. The digital channels and actually taking stuff away from the page and looking at like the CRO tools, the tools that we use here are amazing. You can split test. You can have 2 completely different versions if you're getting enough traffic, 2 completely different versions, and start to see which works better. So yeah, that's really awesome. I think
we and web's really obvious, but email is another place where people really cram emails. People send people emails that are basically entire newsletters just in different boxes. And actually, the best response you're going to get from an email is if you've got a choice in the top where it goes, do you want this or this? And people might just click that because it's a system 1 choice trigger. Am I more this or this? And actually, in the context of helping people through a journey, helping people decide something, do you like this color better than this color, is actually a pretty good way of forcing a choice out of people, and they might just click. And that click you can learn a lot from. So I think emails are one of those places where you can really strip back and really simplify, and actually start testing some stuff about what you get a response out of.
Yeah, and there's also something to be said about not forgetting the fact that you're a customer of your own brand. So, have a workshop with colleagues, with, your team members, and go, for me, I've just bought a kitchen. What was that journey like? Where did I start? Where did I get stuck? Where did I get frustrated? Which brands were kind of answering the tick boxes, and actually kind of do the actual day in the life walk through of what does this journey look like, and then lay your brand against it and go, what do our platforms look like at each stage of that journey? Are we answering the need? If this is a frustration point, what are we doing to try and answer to that frustration? So, running a journey workshop like that can be incredibly helpful as well.
Definitely. And that kind of the point Steve made about wanting to like 2 options on an email. I don't know about anyone else, but on social media, actually on like Instagram stories, someone puts a quiz or a poll, even if like I have no relevance to it at all, I can't help but having to choose something. Like I have to play, I have to get involved. I was doing it the other day with something that I had no chance of knowing the answer, but I was like, I've got to try. So yeah, again, like looking at other channels, like how can we engage people? Because give people a button to push and they quite like pushing it. So yeah,
Becky, I think you're just demonstrating I'm showing my age clearly by referring to the old-fashioned mail, and actually quite right, social posts are a far better example.
Well, no, but email is, I think email, well, I don't know, email's one of those things, isn't it? We do get so many of them. Actually, we're seeing more and more at the moment, direct mail coming back, because people have suddenly seen the opportunity in physically sending things to people and going really old school, because actually it's dropped off so much. So.
And also because people are at home, which means that now the inbox ping that we used to all get slightly excited by is actually the sound of the post flap on the door. Like there's still something about, oh, I wonder what's arrived. There's something that's actually
by Amazon delivery coming today.
Yeah, no, definitely amazing. Well, we are very nearly out of time. I'm going to just pop the survey into the chat there. So if anyone would like to give us feedback, we'd really appreciate it. I'm going to also drop an email later today, or I say Chantel's going to follow up, and she will have that link on there as well. And yeah, we would really appreciate feedback just on format, etc., so that we can keep making these events as great for the audience as possible. I've learned a lot. I hope everyone else has. It was really great. Thank you guys so much. And yeah, we will get recordings out to people, slides out to people, and if anyone would like to follow up and chat more about this and get some ideas of how this might work with your brand, then please do let us know. And yeah, everyone enjoy the rest of your Thursday. Thank you so much for joining us.